Amid speculation over a power struggle within the Chinese Communist Party, its Politburo has reviewed a set of new regulations on the work of the party's institutions. And these new rules hint that President Xi Jinping will be transferring more power to his deputies. The meeting of the 24-member Politburo, which took place on June 30th, was reportedly presided over by Xi Jinping himself, and according to the state-run news agency, the new regulations aim to standardize the policy coordination and review process at the top. And this means the CCP institutions, specifically central commissions and party leading groups, would exercise more effective leadership and coordination and focus on planning, discussing and overseeing major tasks. In fact, the development has sparked speculation that Xi Jinping may be laying the groundwork for an orderly power transition or scaling back his role and delegating more power to his deputies. Earlier reports had emerged, remember, about the mysterious absence of the Chinese president from public view for about 2 weeks between 21st of May and the 5th of June. His disappearance reignited rumors of a power shift within the Chinese Communist Party. Reports have suggested that veteran CCP leaders, including Xi Jinping's predecessor, Hu Jintao, who was publicly humiliated at the 20th Party Congress in 2022, were wielding influence behind the scenes. And Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Yuxia, is reportedly the de facto leader of the Chinese Army, PLA. Backed by senior CCP officials who support former President Jintao, Yuxia had a significant falling out with Xi Jinping, in fact, after helping him secure an unprecedented third five-year term. And let's go straight across now to our esteemed guest joining us from London, Greg Swenson, a political commentator and China foreign affairs analyst. Thanks very much for being here. I have to begin by asking you for your assessment of what's really happening here. A string of questions, of course, and a lot of speculation and chatter about what's happening within the CCP.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement going on in the CCP right now, and recall that President Xi has consolidated power over the last decade or so, and he's made all of the power concentrated with him. The problem with that is China is failing right now in many respects. So he has all the power, but he will get all the blame. So he's doing one of two things here. Either he is trying to delegate so all of the blame doesn't fall on his shoulders, or the party around him sees that the country is failing in many respects and wants to rearrange or restructure the power arrangement in Beijing.
Right, but what would that look like, and what would the larger implications of that happening really be for China?
Yeah, I guess there's two major implications. Well, one is that the PLA is losing patience with Xi. The country's being run into the ground in many respects. And then, of course, you have the economic problems. And he's been able to run this economy basically in a circular economic structure where they overbuild property and real estate in China, and values go up. Valuations are exceedingly high. And that drives some of the economic growth at home, or at least the wealth effect. And then on the other hand, they're still just exporting cheap labor to the world. And while importing 40% of their food and a significant amount, they're the world's largest importer of oil and natural gas. So you have really an unsustainable economy. Property right now is a year ago, property was 300% of GDP. And that's before the correction in property values. But that's significantly higher than the averages around the world. The average property to GDP ratio should be around 102%. Even at the top in the rest of the world, it was 125% of GDP. And with China, 300%. That is completely unsustainable. And it's also making the banking system insolvent. Banks are 300% of Chinese GDP. That's 2 times what the U.S., the absolute value is 2 times the value of the U.S., and the U.S. is a significantly larger economy. So there are real economic weaknesses, and I think that's why the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, are growing frustrated with Xi, and you're seeing all this talk, like in the PLA newspaper, about collective power, or collective management. That's something you haven't seen in China in quite some time.
Right. What you're saying, Greg, also, indicates that there are larger systemic issues at play. So just replacing Xi Jinping, for example, will not really be the sure-shot solution. So what would that mean, and how would that really be processed in a country like China and in a system like China?
Yeah, it's a great question because, we don't know what the replacement will look like. But what we do know is that what they're doing now is not working. It's unsustainable. The banks are basically insolvent. The banking system is in real trouble. Property values are going to continue to go down. There's no economic justification for the values. Basically right now, an average home in China costs 25 times personal income, which is really outrageous. And so, it's unsustainable. I think they're going to have to make major structural changes. They're going to have to stop exporting cheap and slave labor. They're going to have to stop importing all their food. They're going to have to develop businesses at home that can help with sustain a consumerist economy. Right now, they're purely exporters, and there's basically very little consumption. It's all about property and all about being the world's factory floor and stealing IP. So I don't know what the solution is, but I do know what they're doing is not working.
Greg, before we let you go, if you were to summarize for our viewers how things really reached this point, and what time period would you suggest was absolutely crucial and a major contributor to things reaching here?
Yeah, I think it was clearly when Xi took more power. It wasn't just when he became the leader in the party. It was when he took and consolidated power around himself. And he basically ran the economy by running a $300 billion trade deficit with the U.S. and a significant trade deficit with the Europeans. And he was able to get away with that. Well, that's coming to an end with President Trump coming in. There is no way that he's going to sustain that economic model at the expense of the United States and our European trading allies. So this is a really difficult time for Xi. There has to be major change, and it can't just be something tactical. It has to be structural.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment, Greg Swenson. Thanks very much.
Thank you.